South Korea's stock market surpassed a 2,900-point mark for the first time in over 3 years on Wednesday, thanks to continued foreign inflow. On the same day, President Jimin called for stern measures against stock manipulation and unfair trading practices to make sure the financial markets revitalize. South Korea's military halted its loudspeaker broadcast along the border against North Korea as of Wednesday, a clear shift in stance from the new Lee administration's approach to North Korea issues. Jungkook and Jimin of BTS were discharged from their 18-month military service on Wednesday, which now leaves just Suga still on mandatory duty. Good evening. South Korean stocks extended their post-election honeymoon rally on Wednesday. In fact, the benchmark KOSPI soared to an over 3-year high on a foreign buying spree and eased tariff uncertainties. Our Park Jun-han leads our coverage tonight.
South Korea's benchmark KOSPI surpassed 2,900 on Wednesday for the first time in 3 years and 5 months. The KOSPI, which closed below 2,300 on April 9th, has sharply rebounded, gaining over 25% to close at just above 2,907. Among stocks showing strong momentum were those in the financial and semiconductor sectors. Globally, easing uncertainties, especially from the de-escalation of U.S.-China tariff tensions, following high-level talks boosted the rise of Korean semiconductor stocks.
Financial groups and such have risen relatively a bit. I think it's fair to say that the semiconductor industry is also taking part in the uptrend due to the improvement in external conditions.
President Jimin, while he was running for the presidency, said he was committed to achieving KOSPI 5,000 by improving corporate governance and eradicating abuses of management control. Now that Yi has taken office, expectations for his administration's economic policies are fueling investor expectations, which is driving the market rally.
Although these policies have not yet been implemented, the administration is considering measures such as a large-scale supplementary budget to stimulate the domestic economy. Also, expectations that amendments to the Korean Commercial Act will strengthen shareholder protections have generally driven an inflow of foreign funds.
On Wednesday, President Yi visited the Korea Exchange to discuss how to revitalize the stock market by observing operations. At the exchange, Yi said his administration was reviewing the introduction of systems to detect unfair transactions early. Yi also said he plans to introduce a zero-tolerance policy on stock price manipulation. Such a policy would include clawing back any ill-gotten gains. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
Also, for the first time in over a year, employment expanded in South Korea by over 200,000 in May. But the expansion was uneven depending on the sector. Our Kim Do-yeon has this report.
South Korea saw the largest increase in employment in 13 months, rising for a 5th consecutive month in May. According to Statistics Korea on Wednesday, the number of employed people aged 15 or older in May reached 29.16 million, up 245,000 compared to the same period last year. Though the trend had been an incline recently, it's also the first time in over a year the figure went past 200,000 mark. The same sectors continue to lead the incline, with the same sectors also seeing declines.
By industry, employment increased in sectors such as healthcare and social welfare services, professional, scientific and technical services, and finance and insurance. However, it declined year on year in sectors including agriculture, forestry and fisheries, construction and manufacturing.
In fact, the manufacturing sector saw a decline of 67,000 jobs on year, a smaller decline compared to past months, attributing to overall growth. On the other hand, the accommodation and restaurant industry saw, for the first time, a decline in employment in over a year. The number of employees in the industry dropped by 67,000 compared to a year ago, marking the first decline in 15 months. The decrease is the largest since November 2021, when COVID-19 was in full swing, with a drop of 86,000. However, there's hope as a supplementary budget is expected with the new Lee Jae-myung administration and the ruling Democratic Party holding majority to support President Lee's motivation. Local currencies or universal cash distribution seem to be the options.
Providing payments in the form of local currency can help boost the regional economy. So we could see a temporary increase in spending, particularly in sectors like services, lodging, and dining, which may lead to a slight uptick in employment.
In the meantime, for the first time ever, South Korea's workforce aged 60 and over has surpassed 7 million. This comes as younger age groups, except those in their 30s, saw employment declines, with more seniors staying in the labor market amid a rapidly aging population. The overall employment rate for those 15 and older rose to 63.8%, up 0.3 percentage points from a year ago. 김도현, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung held a 20-minute phone call with Czech Prime Minister PM Fiala on Wednesday afternoon. According to presidential spokesperson Kang Yoo-jung, the two leaders described the recent $18 billion contract for South Korea to build 2 nuclear reactors at the Dukovany power plant as a milestone for expanding economic cooperation, and agreed to broaden cooperation beyond nuclear energy to include advanced industries, infrastructure, and energy. The leaders also noted this year marks the 35th anniversary of diplomatic ties between South Korea and the Czech Republic. President Lee invited Prime Minister Fiala to South Korea at a convenient time, to which Fiala responded with his appreciation. The U.S. has finally confirmed a top-level call that took place last week between new President Lee Jae-myung and President Donald Trump. This comes amid growing anticipation that the two leaders will engage in a face-to-face meeting at the G7 summit, which will kick off in a matter of days. Our Oh Seong has more.
Washington says it's confident that the South Korea-US alliance will continue to thrive under new President Lee Jae-myung, confirming that the new leader held a phone call with President Donald Trump last week. On Tuesday, State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce said at a press briefing that the US congratulates Lee on his election win, expressing optimism in response to a question about Lee's, quote, pragmatic approach to bilateral ties. She acknowledged that Lee had spoken with Trump last Friday in a 20-minute phone call, marking the first time a US official confirmed the call had taken place. The conversation itself happened later than expected, on the third day of the Lee administration, bearing contrast with former Presidents Moon Jae-in and Yoon Suk-yeol, who spoke on the phones with their American counterparts within hours of taking office. Following the belated call, President Lee's office almost immediately announced it had taken place, elaborating how the two leaders exchanged pleasantries and agreed on making efforts to reach a mutually satisfactory agreement on tariffs before the Trump administration begins imposing its delayed reciprocal duties on imports. The Lee administration is reportedly aiming to postpone the July 8th deadline. However, no readouts or messages emerge from Washington regarding the top-level conversation. Experts have speculated the delay may have been intentional on the US side as a means of passively pressuring Seoul amid negotiations.
We need to understand Trump's worldview different from, predecessors. He considers weakening of America is not mainly because of enemy country, hostile country like Soviet Union, Russia, China, and things like that. Rather than this enemy country, but because the weakness comes from allies and partners who exploited U.S. market unfairly and free riding on security.
The two leaders also reportedly agreed to hold a face-to-face meeting soon, with the US president extending an invitation to visit America. But first, Lee and Trump are likely to hold a brief summit on the sidelines of the G7 meeting in Canada starting June 15th. Oh Seong, Arirang News.
The South Korean military has, from today, halted loudspeaker broadcasts against North Korea and border areas, just 1 week after President Lee's inauguration. And now this, following the president's orders made earlier this afternoon, aiming to ease military tensions between the two Koreas, paving the way for restored mutual trust. President Yi is set to have made the decision in light of the recent absence of any major provocations from the north, but clarified that there was no prior consultation with Pyongyang regarding this measure. The halt comes for the first time in a year since the former Yoon administration resumed broadcast last June for the first time in 6 years in response to North Korea's trash balloon campaigns. National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik has said while President Yi remains committed to constitutional reform, changes could take some time. Marking his first year in office on Wednesday, Woo stressed that reform must be carefully timed, as the new government is starting without a transition team and talks will need to be held. He floated the idea of a constitutional referendum alongside a presidential election back in April in order to address calls for a decentralization of power following the martial law declaration, but he withdrew the idea after a backlash. Woo also called for the swift passage of a supplementary budget to address urgent economic and diplomatic challenges. Starting Tuesday, parts of downtown LA have been under an 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew as the protests against Trump's immigration crackdown continue. Now, LA police reportedly began mass arrests on the first night of the curfew. Our Shinayang reports.
Protests against the Trump administration's immigration crackdown have continued for several days in Los Angeles. In response, the city imposed a nighttime curfew on Tuesday in parts of downtown. Mayor Karen Bass said the curfew covers a 1 square mile area in downtown LA where most of the protests are taking place. It runs from 8 p.m. on Tuesday to 6 a.m. the next morning. She explained that 23 businesses were looted and there was widespread vandalism that occurred the night before, saying the city had reached a tipping point. Bass said it could be in effect for a few days, but the city will decide later whether to extend it. According to CNN, the Los Angeles Police Department said that several groups were still gathering in areas under curfew and noted that it had begun making mass arrests. The demonstrations against the crackdown and deportation of illegal immigrants are spreading to other major cities, including San Francisco, New York, and Chicago. Amid the further outbreaks, Texas Governor Greg Abbott announced that the Texas National Guard will be deployed across the state to maintain peace and order. Abbott said peaceful protests would be allowed, but anyone harming people or property would be arrested, adding that the National Guard will do everything it can to help the police maintain order. The decision came after President Donald Trump sent a National Guard to the protest in Los Angeles. With concerns lingering over the current state of the Los Angeles area, hundreds of U.S. Marines arrived also on Tuesday under orders from President Trump. Along with the recent deployment of Marines, some 4,000 National Guard members have been sent to LA to control the protests. Meanwhile, progressive groups say that they'll be holding more than 1,500 No Kings protests across the country on Saturday, which is the same day a military parade is set to take place in the U.S. Capitol, marking the U.S. Army's 250th anniversary. The organizers believe that Trump is using the anniversary to celebrate his birthday, which is also on June 14th. 신하영, Arirang News.
More than half of OLED TVs sold in North America during the first quarter of this year were made by LG Electronics. This is according to market research from Statista on Wednesday, with the specific market share at 51%. This also means that LG has maintained the market lead for 13 straight years. LG's OLED TVs have recently been touted by the IT media, such as Consumer Reports and Mashable. The reasons why LG OLED TVs are popular in the North American market include outstanding picture quality and differentiated AI feature, among others. Other OLED-making competitors for LG include Samsung, Panasonic, and Sony. Two more BTS members, Jungkook and Jimin, returned from their mandatory military service on Wednesday. Now it's just Suga that the army are awaiting to see all 7 members on one stage. Our Park Hyo-bin fills us in with more.
As they stepped out of the car, Jungkook and Jimin were greeted with loud cheers, bouquets in hand, smiling at their fans. The pair enlisted together back in December 2023, served in the army, and were officially discharged from mandatory military service on Wednesday morning. After a short salute, Jungkook thanked those he served with.
To our seniors and the officers who spent time with us, thank you so much for taking good care of us.
Jimin expressed heartfelt appreciation for the fans who had waited for them.
With our service now behind us, I believe it's time to keep building the vision we've been working on. We'll do our best to come back with something even better.
Fans from across the globe gathered near the base from early morning to welcome the 2 stars. Banners reading "Purple is back" and "Jungkook's moment begins now" lined the area, along with giant balloons. With Jin and Taeyup already discharged last year and RM and V returning on Tuesday, only one member remains before a full reunion. Suga, currently serving as a social service worker, is set to complete his duty later this month. As BTS celebrates the 12th anniversary of its debut this Friday, excitement is building for a long-awaited full group comeback, possibly just around the corner. Park Hyo-bin, Arirang News.
A South Korean animation is taking the U.S. box office by storm, even surging past director Bong Joon-ho's Oscar-winning Parasite. Now that is The King of Kings by director Jang Seong-ho. Our Choi Soo-hyung sat down with him.
The King of Kings is a 3D animated film directed by Jang Seong-ho. It tells the life story of Jesus based on the book The Life of Our Lord by British author Charles Dickens. Famous Hollywood actors like Pierce Brosnan, Uma Thurman, and Ben Kingsley voiced the characters. Following its release in the US on April 11th, the film made over $54 million in just 17 days, breaking the box office record of Bong Joon-ho's Parasite for the highest grossing Korean film in the US. Director Jang Seong-ho expressed both pride and humility about achieving such success with a non-Korean story told through a Korean production team.
I had been running a visual effects company for a long time, so I was confident in technical skills. I thought animation was the best way to fully use them. But Korea couldn't support the budget, so we aimed for the US market. Christian content there almost never fails, and no one had ever made a full-length animated film about Jesus. That's when I knew this would work.
He said Christianity is deeply rooted in American culture, so he adapted Dickens' book to avoid cliché and worked hard to make it feel natural to international audiences.
We were inspired by Dickens' book for a fresh approach to tell the story through the eyes of a curious child learning who the true king is. Since our main target was America, we focused on making it feel natural to their audience. We got expert advice and many reviews to ensure it wasn't just imitation, but something truly comfortable.
He said it was tough to focus fully on character quality and production without much support.
Creating delicate character movement was a real challenge, and I'm not fully satisfied with the results. Most of my energy went into securing funding without much support, not creating. But now, with better support and conditions, I'm confident the next project will be much stronger.
He hopes that Korea's animation environment won't waste the talents of Korean creators.
There are many talented Koreans, but a lack of opportunities pushes them away, often abroad. Many are now working in Hollywood. I hope the success of my work, The King of Kings, helps create a better environment so they can return and shine in Korea.
The King of Kings will be released in Korea on July 23rd. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
Representatives from multilateral development banks, local companies, and the Korean government gathered here in Seoul for talks on ways to foster cooperation in the environmental and green technology industry. Our Moon Ji-young tells us more.
Strengthening cooperation between domestic companies and global partners and promoting local companies' eco-friendly technologies is what the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy aim to achieve at the 18th Global Green of Korea Forum currently being held in Seoul.
We hope that this year's forum serves as a platform to enable participants to see new business opportunities by sharing each country's policies and efforts for carbon reduction, as well as the success stories of international development banks.
The forum, which opened on Wednesday, seeks to provide a robust platform for eco-friendly and energy industry businesses in alignment with the global trend of carbon reduction to support the overseas expansion of domestic companies and the securing of crucial growth engines. This key event provides networking opportunities, project briefings, and matchmaking for Korean and international businesses.
Korea's leadership in environmental technology is an example that we admire, and we're eager to build bridges of cooperation that benefit both of our people.
The scale of the projects presented by the overseas clients and buyers at this year's event amounts to a total of $8 billion. Key projects include the Bangladesh Water Supply and Sewerage Authority water treatment project. Over the course of 3 days, domestic companies will have the opportunity to actively promote the excellence of a variety of environmental and green technologies to potential overseas clients and buyers. 문지영, Arirang News.
Summer heat of around 30 degrees Celsius warmed up most parts of the country. The daytime temperature moved up to 29 degrees in Seoul. Tomorrow temperatures will rise up to 31 degrees. Under the clear sky, strong UV rays continue during the day. The ultraviolet index will rise to a very high level from the morning. Then UV rays will be at their peak in the afternoon. Make sure to protect yourself from the strong rays. Tomorrow morning, Seoul, Daejeon, and Gyeongju will start off at 17 degrees, Busan at 20 degrees. Highs will move up to 30 degrees in Chuncheon, Daejeon, and Daegu, 23 degrees in Jeju Island. It will start to rain on Jeju Island tomorrow and spread to southern parts of Chungcheongdo province by Friday. Rain is forecast all over the country on Saturday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. For all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.